All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Salam alaikum. This is Yasser.
And a very good evening, good morning to the people across the world, and Assalamu alaikum from Doha. This is Dadar Khan, Gazanfurullah Khan. Welcome to the next episode of the Geeky Nomads.
So today's episode is something, it arose out of, I followed this one individual, since being an Apple, I don't know, fanboy and everything. And when I stumbled upon this person's name and I looked into his origins, and I was actually like, not shocked as anything. I was like surprised, and I was like, "Huh." There's actually someone from the Middle East who's actually covering more on Apple, worldwide and in the region. So I dove in more, and then I realized he actually left and started going independent. So I was like, well, you know what? Let's just, bring him on and talk more, especially given this has been a very big year for Saudi Arabia, and he's a Saudi citizen as well, ethnically. And we want to hear more from him, especially given now this region's been in the spotlight for, I would say, since the start of the year up until now. We're in December.
Very much, I think over the last 12 months, or since we have had our season 2 of Geeky Nomads, we have seen Saudi delve into a lot of tech, a lot of other investments, and we have seen companies, conglomerates just coming in, throwing in money, and even the country itself offering a couple of its natural resources towards this institution and making way for the next generation. So I think with that next generation, it simply defines our next guest as well, who is quite focused on technology, what the country has to offer, and his own interest of how to take it forward. I think I'll leave it to Yasser to introduce him.
So, without much further ado, our guest on this episode is none other than Sami Fathi. To give you a little nutshell, he's been an avid young diplomat, a writer, and a tech commentator. His work has spanned a lot of other major events, public diplomacy, and especially Apple focused media. As a Saudi citizen, he has represented the country at the UN, spoken at global forums. He's built a strong portfolio across journalism, hence writing for MacRumors. And he works, I would say, brings his expertise in technology and global affairs and helping to, I would say, not flex, but showcase what the country has to offer. And while at the same time, highlighting what the young people in the country are not just advocating, but can really bring about meaningful growth and change as the country, marches, I think not march, races towards the National Vision 2030. So without much further ado, ahlan wa sahlan to the Geeky Nomads podcast, Sami Fathi.
Well, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Thank you for
assalam.
having me.
So I want to start off with the first obvious question. Now, you've covered much of Apple, if I remember correctly, I think for more than 2 years at macrumors.com. Now, usually these sites are by, people who sit in the West and everything. How did you get your start writing for such a prominent site that covers everything from Apple?
It started quite naturally, to be honest. I've always been a fan of Apple, been always a very avid user, and it was funny because I grew up almost reading MacRumors myself, so it was kind of a full circle moment to then be writing there. I really just used to post, post on X, on Twitter at the time, covering Apple. I have a passion for just digging into the nitty and gritty and the news pieces that people typically didn't find. And actually being in Saudi was a massive advantage from a time zone perspective, because when I'm awake, majority of the writers are in the West and in the state. There are some in Europe too, but majority are, US or Canadian based. So when I'm awake, they're all asleep. So that gave me a lot of time to then, look up stories and do my research to then be able to post it quite before anyone else. So I kept doing that for a good amount of time, and some of the MacRumors, recognized it, and I started working there. But I would also, as you kind of alluded to in your question, there is a lack of representation of people from this part of the world in mainstream news in general, but especially in tech. And I was just happy to play a very small role in being a voice for, the 600 million tech consumers that live in this part of the world to then be able to be a voice for them and to, in my small way, in a very, very small way, try and be their voice in places that typically they were silenced before. So it was an interesting time, an interesting journey, and it's been quite fun.
But just I mean, or just to expand more when you I mean, given that, I mean, knowing how the media scene is in the region when it comes to, it's very closed off. You have to be either with some major media publication house, like as if with Bloomberg and everything, since they tend to get more preference. But with you, I mean, you're covering on an online news outlet, and yet you being in Saudi, how did you at least try to permeate your way so that at least you would cover a speculation like, oh, Apple's coming out, like, because I've read all the things you've covered. Like I mean, I think if I'm right, you started around the time after when Apple started its switch from the Intel to the Apple Silicon era. So it'll be good to know now. How did you have, as you as a Saudi citizen, knowing how the media landscape is in the region, how did you wade your way through it so that you still covered things globally, but at the time you found things regionally and you brought them to the global stage?
Good question. I mean, a lot of it had to do with my interactions on Twitter and my interactions
Ah,
on X. And you kind of mentioned it too in the beginning. You kind of stumbled upon me and you were like, oh wow, there's someone from Saudi who's writing there and who's part of this community. So a lot of it had to do with me simply interacting with other Saudis and other fellow GCC
in
Gulf
Arabic.
citizens in Arabic and in
Arabic.
English. Texting them and replying to them, answering their questions. So a lot of it came through on that way. But I mean, one instance, and I presume we'll talk about Apple's expansion here sometime during the episode. But
Yes, we
I
will.
remember when I was at MacRumors, I annoyed PR people at Apple because I would send them emails almost every month asking them for updates on whether or not Apple was planning to expand here. And every single time my email would just get completely ignored, as was 88% of other emails that you send to Apple.
I'm in the
Um,
same boat as well.
so they reply sometimes, very rarely, but I remember sending them emails. So a lot of it came through just my interactions with people online, but I also tried my best to reflect that in the actual reporting that I did. Whether it was through, as you said, speculations or trying to tie back speculations to Saudi consumers on my commentary on X. So it was, it was obviously sort of an uncharted road that no one else had gone down before. So I was kind of figuring it out as I go. Uh, but generally speaking, it just kind of came down to me showing up online and talking to people.
I think just like, delving more in that while we kick off, how the career has taken you where you are today. Would you think there was a specific moment that actually, like, that sparked the moment? Like, what shit, there's no one in the region, there's no one doing this. Not just out of your goodwill, like for example, how we started Geek Nomad was just out of a simple conversation. We're like, you know what, we're gonna do this, and it's something that has picked up, although we may not be as crazy big as other podcasters. But would you, if you had to go back and choose a moment where you decided, like, this is something I would invest myself in? Maybe at that age you had different hopes to do something else, but you dwelled in this and you invested in it, and more
Mm.
ratherly acceptance of people, because or out of your goodwill, you want to say the best things ever. You want to keep people hooked. You want to keep people interested. But where people, when you kicked off yourself into this industry, were willing to listen to you?
Yeah, another good question. It was really a matter of all the stars aligning. There's obviously so much happening here in Saudi Arabia, so much happening in tech. At the same time, there's also this boom of a very robust local ecosystem of content creators, of people who are writers or TikTokers or Instagrammers or podcasters or whatever it may be. And I sort of saw those two stars aligning in parallel, and I always knew I was passionate about technology. I've always been passionate about writing. So I can't really pinpoint a specific moment that I think it kind of clicked in my head, but it was certainly something where I saw all the stars aligning and I was like, you know what, this has some legs to run on. This is something that has a future. In what capacity, I still don't know, to be fair. Um, but I kind of saw the stars aligning quite early on, and I was like, yeah, this is something that is going to have potential. I mean, this was back in 2020, 2021, where those, I kind of
Yeah.
saw those stars aligning. Uh, you know, the world was completely different than it is today. I mean, even just, how much the world has changed
I
in 4 to
remember
5
that
years.
time. Nobody can forget it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I made a good bet on wanting to go down this road, and knock on wood, so far it's turned out great. But it was really just a moment of all the stars coming together.
I think that goes very well within how the market, Saudi market specifically, has evolved over the years. I mean, it's we all know it's a general stereotype when people hear Middle East, when people hear Saudi, you're like, okay, like, Bedouins, people on camel, not knowing how tech was and everything.
Oil money.
Oil money, all those things it's pretty common. Even now, even in today's age, people have that mindset. But given how tech has influenced the region, I think Saudi has ever had a bigger market for everything, be it Snapchat coming to the region. Even before UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, or Oman, or any of the GCC countries, Saudi had the biggest base of Snap users. And same thing with Instagram and even Twitter. I'm like, the royal leadership
Saudi
has
was in the top
investments.
5 markets worldwide
Yeah,
when it was called Twitter. I still
Twitter.
remember this vividly.
And we used to, when we were kicking off, I think roughly around 2011, 2012, when Twitter or social media became a thing in the region. I used to have a media agency, and we were consulting government institutions like, hey, you need to be on social media. You need to listen to few things. You need to, it was, I think, the days of BlackBerry and the BB pins
Yeah.
going around. And it has evolved so much from then to now. And I think it has changed the mindset of people in the region, at least, if not of the people elsewhere, but the people in the region. It's like, hey, you know what? We are more open to such ideas, and we are more such open to people talking about it. And I think, really kudos to you for bringing and aligning your stars together to make that happen, and to keep continue doing it.
And I want to wade more right down to the Apple. So, I mean, I still remember luckily Khan mentioned 2011 and all, because I remember that was the first time, that was the year when Apple brought the Apple Store to the UAE. I still have that email. And then a couple of years they brought to the retail stores. Now, this year, Apple delivered on its promise and they brought the online store to Saudi Arabia. And you being there, I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts, especially, on how that's been well embraced and where you see them expanding, because they did say 2026 is just around the corner, and that's when they're opening up their first store in the Diriyah district in Riyadh.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I got that notification of Apple dropping that press release. I was like, about damn time. um, Very long overdue. Um, I obviously I'm very happy as a user, as a consumer. I still have not bought anything from the online store just yet. I'll wait. I'm waiting for the actual store to open so I can go in and actually buy something at in the area with the store.
But you're
Um,
in Jeddah, right?
I am, yeah. So there
Oh,
are no announced plans as of yet to open a store in the second largest city in the country, but I suspect that's not too far down the line. So as a consumer, I'm very happy. As someone who's observed the company for a long time, um, you can't help but understand that Apple is very strategic when it comes to its products. It's a company that has an incredible amount of patience, more patience than I think any other company in the world. I mean, Apple plays the long game at a at just an unfathomable level when it comes to its products. But it also does the same with its business. It doesn't simply expand into new markets, and it doesn't really invest resources in a market unless it truly believes in it. It's not looking at the last 5 years of a country. It's looking at the next 50, and it's betting on those next 50 years and what that country and what that market is going to be able to do for it as a business, but also for its community. Apple at the end of the day has a very robust developer community, a very robust um, creative community, a very robust consumer community. and it wants to invest and it wants to go into markets where it feels like, yes, this is a market where all of our communities are going to be able to thrive and grow, and where we can actually invest in local talent. So, from both perspectives, incredibly happy. And I would also note the significance of opening a store in Diriyah, which is the birthplace of the kingdom. I thought was a very beautiful choice to open the store there. So I can't wait for that store to open, and for what's next for Apple here.
I mean,
I think,
the funny thing you mentioned is that, when speaking of developer, I mean, people may not even know about this, but Apple actually has their developer academy in Saudi. It's the only one in the Middle East, and it's in Riyadh, if I'm right, in partnership with,
Yeah.
I can't remember which university. Funny,
Mhm.
also a very good thing for them was that I think it was in 2024, when Apple did the Swift Student Challenge. There was actually a Saudi female whose app actually was one of the winning entries because she did it, I think, to address stammering. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is actually great. Because many people have this mentality of the GCC region in the Middle East is that, oh yeah, they'll just put a citizen there because as and I was like, you know what? Not everyone is that privileged or in
it's
that position of entitlement. There are some who really work. I mean, like you. I mean, you've proven yourself as such, so that at least you don't. It's not like as if you have a shortcut, but for you having covered a lot of Apple is probably what's gotten you to that position. And I want to mention something
Mhm.
very, very funny when it came to the Apple Store. So when Apple first came to the UAE, I mean, you've lived here in the region now. People think, oh, it's GCC Khalij. Across the border, it's not much different. So I remember people in Qatar were trying to buy online on the Apple UAE store only for multiple times to get their credit cards declined and rejected, and then the banks called them. And I was like, I told them, guys, you might think it's the Middle East and it'll work, but it will not work the same way.
Yeah.
Because I realized that, correct me if I'm wrong, given your expertise, is that when Apple sets up in the online store and the retail store in the country, when it comes to online orders, they somehow to some means link up with the banking system so that they accept only payments and credit cards issued within that country, and even know how to catch potential mail forwarding addresses, because I know some people tried doing that but it didn't go through for them.
Yeah, so you are right on that. So 2 points. First one, yeah. So it is important to note though that while the online store, the official online store on on apple.com/SA opened up recently, Apple has had a main distribution center here for a couple of years. Apple has had an official presence here through Amazon
Yeah.
for, I believe, since 2022, if I'm not mistaken. They have an official warehouse in Riyadh, an Apple,
Oh
an
yeah.
Apple warehouse that's there. So the foundations for the online Apple store and Apple's presence here, is not within the last year or so. It's been something that's been in a while. And in regards to the banking system, yes. So Apple will limit cards only issued, by local banks. But it also goes further than that. I mean, we also have our own financing options. If you want installment plans or something, we have our own apps for that. And the second point, referring to something you said there in the beginning, regarding the developer academy, from a political point, Apple, as I said, is very careful with where it invests its money, and it wants to do so in places where it feels like it's stable. And Saudi Arabia is one of the only places, I think, in the world where you have not only economic stability, but you have social stability and you have political stability and you have such high human capital and such high human talent that, it was never a question of whether or not Apple or any of the other tech companies would show up here. It was just a matter of time before they realized that, wait a second, there's all the ingredients that you need here to be able to not only build here, but to grow here. So, just as kind of the stars aligned with me way back early in my early days, I think Apple and the other companies I finally realized that, wait a second, this is a place that it's not only running, it's light speed ahead,
which actually makes I'm gonna get a little bit controversial here, but just when how who's this Burger King. So Burger
Mm.
King has a model on based off McDonald's. So they wait for McDonald's to open a store somewhere, establish a business, keep running for 6 months to a year, see how it is. And if you look anywhere in the world, you find a McDonald's, you're going to find a Burger King right next to it.
Yeah.
And I think this is something, in my opinion, that Apple kind of follows with other big tech companies, let be Meta or any other platforms that have presence in the countries in the region, and see is it an invested authority within them that they should come forward and be like, hey, we are here. They're already there. The product is there. The consumer market is there. The development market is there. The political influence is already there. They don't need anything more to say like, hey, okay, we're officially here. This is something that I have never been able to understand why Apple kind of holds back. Even Dubai, I'm like, they opened up 4 years after the Dubai Mall was fully functional and Burj Khalifa was operational and everything. And then they said, oh, you know what? Okay, Dubai is becoming a tourism hotspot. People are going. Even doesn't matter nationality wise, but like it is being influenced by an influx of people from all over the world, that it makes sense for us to have presence there and be like, try to make the most of it. Do you think it's kind of the same with Saudi also, more than trying to benefit from where Saudi is going now, than to come and be part of that journey as well?
I wouldn't look at it from that perspective. I would look at it from the point of view when it comes to Apple in specific, that Apple, and one of the critiques that consumers have with Apple is that it's either 0% or it's 100%. There is no 70, 80.
Definitely.
There's no 60, there's no 50. I don't want to name check any other companies, but there are other major companies that make phones and maybe even foldables that prefer to experiment publicly, and whose first generation product is not a mainstream product. Apple does not experiment publicly. Apple, when it releases something,
They're sure
goes
of it.
Yeah.
they're 100% sure of it. It is the best that they can make. It's not a half off product. No, it is the best that they can make. I look at it very similarly from a business perspective. I have no doubt that Apple could have opened here years ago. There was nothing stopping them from opening up here 5, 6 years ago. The reason they didn't was because they wanted to make sure that, I think, A, they had the proper infrastructure here needed. They wanted to build the logistical supply chain and the logistical framework that they needed to make sure that if a customer bought something on their Apple store, they're going to get it in a day and 2 days and not 2 weeks. And it's going to have to fly to China, then Hong Kong, then India, then Dubai, then fly over here. I think the second reason is that they wanted to make sure that they have really tight partnerships with our financing options here. So I mentioned we have installment plans. There's surely 2 main apps, Tabi and Tamara. They wanted to make sure that they have really strong partnerships with those, so they can integrate those quite well into the online store and the physical store. And third, and most importantly, is the people. The Apple Developer Academy. I'm not quite sure exactly when it opened, but there would be very little value, in my opinion, for Apple to have just straight up opened up a store here without at least cultivating some sense of community of developers, some sense of community of startups, some sense of community where once it does open, those people have a home. Apple didn't want to build the home and then wait for people to come in. It wanted to create that community. And then once that community was alive and flourishing and really doing well, then it says, okay, we're going to open up a store. And Apple stores, they're not just storefronts. They're incubators of talent. That today at Apple Sessions, the creative workshops, the sense of community that it gives. I know people who go, to Apple stores in Europe just to hang out. I mean, it's really just a hangout spot. I mean, they don't go there to buy anything. They just go there to hang out because they're so cool. So I have no doubt that Apple could have opened up here 5, 6 years ago, but I think those factors, which are, they're not my speculation. This is a trend and a pattern that you can see across everything that Apple does. But I think those reasons are probably why Apple said, let's wait it out a bit. Let's build the foundation first, and then once we feel that foundation is strong enough, we'll build on top of it.
Yeah. So I want to slightly rewind back a couple of years. So I don't know if you remember many years ago, Business Insider shared this photo of the Crown Prince with Tim Cook as he was going on a big Silicon Valley tour. This was in 2018, and I think this was just about when the Apple Loop wasn't even fully open yet. It was still doing final touches, and they were taking a tour. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that that was the pivotal moment that actually put the seed saying that, look, Apple, Saudi is now ready. We want you to come in, and that's your next place of growth. Yes, you've come to UAE, but you know what? Saudi is your next gold mine.
Well, I would have loved to have been part of that tour. God knows what they would have. I might have snuck away and then gone into some of the back rooms that. I wish I was part of that tour.
We all want to.
Yeah. I think that visit, it showed Apple, but I think it showed Silicon Valley because, as you mentioned, he went to several companies. It wasn't just Apple. It was a larger Silicon Valley tour. I think it showed that, we don't want to be spectators to the tech conversation. We want to be we want to be the main person talking at that table. And Apple is strategically important for us as a country. And it's not only Apple. I mean, you look at Nvidia, Google, even now X and Grok, who just signed massive deals with us. So that visit, I mean, I wouldn't say that visit was the start of anything robust, because I don't want people to think that, we woke up one day as a country and we were like, all right, you know what? We're gonna take tech seriously. We're gonna start being serious in tech. I mean, if only it was that easy. I mean, snap our fingers and hope for the best. But what you're seeing today is the result of decades of investment. Not in industries, not in companies, but in people. And me sitting here speaking to you with the portfolio I have is solid proof that you cannot have a scalable and a prosperous and a stable economy if you don't invest in people. And Saudi Arabia does this better than anyone else. So if anything, that visit only cemented that idea further, that we have talent here, and Apple and everyone else, let's figure out ways to give those talents opportunities and make them part of the conversation.
I mean, that's brings me to the next question, which is just tapping on to what you said of what Saudi has to offer. I mean, if you had to, in terms of a range of years, and see, let's say 10 years ago to today, and define, how tech savvy the citizens are of Saudi Arabia, from your own experience, how would you best summarize it?
Oh, incredibly tech savvy. I mean, it's hard to even just, I mean,
they must use an iPhone for sure.
I mean, like you can see his experience itself, right? He's trying to find to express the answer in a way which it's how critical it is. Like, there's nothing that we are not doing without tech in today's world.
Even take a simple example. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's in the States, and for him to renew his driver's license takes him weeks. And that's partially because the US government was shut down. But even without that shutdown, it would have taken him weeks. It would have taken him multiple visits to the DMV. It would have taken him God knows what bureaucratic loopholes and what bureaucratic nonsense that he would have to go through. As a Saudi, it takes me less than 30 seconds to renew my driver's license. I open an app, click renew, and it's renewed. 2 days later, I get it in the mail, and it's done.
Yeah.
I could go on and on and on and on and on about these examples. I mean, I think in one of the global indexes, Saudi Arabia is top 3 for digital competence with government services, for example. 90+% of anything that you would need to go to a government office to do, you can do online. And that's not something easy and simple to do. I mean, that requires almost breaking down a system, rebuilding it from the scratch to be able to accommodate a convenience like that. So I could sit here for hours and go through different examples. Another example, I was landing in the US a couple of months ago. I didn't get signal. I mean, I'm one of those people that turn my phone airplane mode off on my phone as we're approaching. So I turned it off and I got no signal, no reception. Here, we're descending. I turn airplane mode off and I already have 5G.
Yeah. I can concur that within the region at least, I
Certainly
have a
within
habit of that. Like, about 5,000 feet, you're catching at least 3G, if not more,
right.
and you're connected. Yeah,
It's and then we're the ones that are living in the darkened age. I mean, it makes no sense. But I mean, it's yeah.
No, I
Uh,
think we've come very sorry, sir. We've come very far. I've seen changes. Just a bit of Saudi. Like every year, we have our religious trips for Umrah to Makkah and Medina. The amount of I want to say the bureaucracy or the bumps that we used to have issuing visas, issuing this and that, it has gone down drastically so much. Like for someone growing up in the region and being stereotyped and seeing how the region has worked over the years for everything that you need to do and see it change. Like now coming into Doha, for example, uh, my passport has been stamped in like the last 5-6 years coming into Doha. And this used to be a thing when you travel to the West, like, oh, they don't stamp your passport in the US. I don't even take my passport out of my pockets. We have an app. It takes 3 seconds for me to enter the country. UAE has an open walkway system where you don't even need to take out an app. You just walk through through a specific lane, and you're either entering or exiting the country. The same changes within Saudi as well. Like the first entry into Saudi, they take your biometrics, and the next visits are just simple, easy scan your passport, and you're in the country. And this is where how far we have come, and like we have always I think we are stereotyping again, envisioned the West as to offer us the leadership or the thoughtful process of like, hey, this is who we are, we do the innovations. But when you go down there, I mean, I'm sorry, like as you said, DMV, getting a appointment in the DMV is like you have to wait for a month, 45 days, forget about what comes next. And this is where I think people are changing the mindsets, and like Apple coming to the region and other institutions also coming to the region is bringing that investment and trust in the people of the region itself, MENA specifically, to say like, hey, okay, we know you have something to offer. Show us what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and another point to branch off of that, these companies, they're not looking for money. And that is a very common talking point that I hear when people say, and when we talk about companies expanding to Saudi Arabia, they're like, oh, they're just going there for the oil money. If companies, I mean, at the end of the day, all business is about money, right? But if companies were truly just purely chasing capital, then they would not be coming here. They would be going to Switzerland or China or
Singapore,
the US or Singapore, wherever. What makes Saudi Arabia so attractive, and I mentioned it earlier, is the people. Is that companies come here because they understand that A, it's economically stable and it's economically predictable. We have a very good credit rating. So there is no economic concerns that the market's going to collapse tomorrow. It is a very predictable and a very stable market. Secondly, we're very socially and politically stable. And thirdly, we have very high human capital and human talent. And when you get all three of those things, plus, yes, very high financial capital, it's a no-brainer. So that's a very common talking point that people love to bring up, that, oh, companies only come here for that. No, it's certainly not the case. And as someone who's lived here and has seen this transformation span over 6 to 7 years, I can say full-heartedly that is not the case.
I want to expand a little bit more on a couple of the things you've mentioned earlier. So, like you mentioned, like NVIDIA and Qualcomm. So, all of these names have been, coming in. And I know just recently NVIDIA is like, okay, we're going to power up Humain, who I think right now is still currently launched in Saudi, but still graduating at worldwide. I mean, with all of these big names coming in, like Qualcomm, NVIDIA, AWS expanding their presence more and all, Do you think it's too much as a Saudi, or is like the best is yet to come?
Oh yeah, I know the best is definitely yet to come. I mean, I also think it's wrong to see all these things as sudden. And I also mentioned it earlier. You know, we didn't wake up one morning and we're like, okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
go out and get NVIDIA and we're gonna go out and get Apple and Google and Microsoft and they're all gonna come here overnight. You know, none of this happened in a vacuum. You don't get Fortune 500 companies not only relocating their offices. You know, that's one thing to tell people you're going to be working in one city and now you're working in another. That's one thing. But to relocate your entire operations, to say we're moving our A to Z regional operations from this place to Riyadh, that doesn't happen over one handshake. That doesn't happen over one phone call with some Saudi official that's like, yeah, we'll give you money, come and do it. None of this happens in a vacuum. It happens, and people are going to get tired of me saying this, but it happens because you have all those things aligning. You have such high human potential. You have such high human capital. And I say even more than that, you have a government that understands that its greatest asset is its people. You can mine all the oil you want. You can mine all the rare earth minerals you want. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the people, if you don't have the human capital to put behind those projects, then they're just going to become dust and useless. The Saudi government, I think, is one of the only governments in the world that literally directly invests in people. And I can speak to that from personal experience, and every young Saudi can. And you don't find that anywhere else. So none of this happened in a vacuum. I don't think it's too much. I think it is certainly just the beginning. And you mentioned Humane and NVIDIA and Grok and X, and I mean just the potential is incredible. And a lot of these investments, they're 5-10 year investments. So we're not even still seeing the result of those investments, and we'll continue to see more results of those come out every year. So there is a long roadmap and a very, very high trajectory going forward.
And I want to take a little bit further. So, I mean, like you mentioned with human capital and talent, and the country diversifying its economy. Just earlier this year, I mean, I know PIF, which is Saudi's sovereign wealth fund, they partnered up to help build manufacturing for Lenovo's products, and recently even HP. I know you're a big Apple lover, and I'm guessing you would wish us like, it'll be good to see Apple MacBooks designed by Apple in California and made in Saudi Arabia, which I think is going to be plastered with all the manufacturing coming out for Lenovo and HP. How significant, not like you said, I know you said on behalf of the Arab world, but not just for Saudi, but for wider Arab, how significant would it be seeing like you're buying a Lenovo laptop or a HP laptop and you suddenly see made in Saudi Arabia?
Well, it's not a hypothetical. We already see a lot of products made in Saudi Arabia, and I'll give you a very big example: Lucid.
Yes,
Lucid
I forgot about.
cars.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. They were making cars. I think they're ramping up.
Lucid production happens an hour and a half to 2 hours away from where I'm talking to you right now. So it is not a hypothetical for us to see made in Saudi Arabia plastered on. It is a reality that we're living in. Now, obviously, production is a very, very complicated and a very complex thing. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, we're going to see iPhones made here anytime soon. That's not what I think anyone is projecting, and that's not it's a very complicated thing. But what I think the message is that moving manufacturing to a country is a vote of confidence that this place is stable and the right place for us to produce. And again, going back to the point I've been making, it's because of that human capital, right? Sure, robots will play a very big part in production, but you still need people. You still need that human capital behind it. So it is very fun and exciting to see. But yeah, we already see this. I mean, you can go to any large supermarket chain, for example, and there will be an entire aisle of made in Saudi products. This
Just
entire
like in
aisle,
Doha, right, Khan, with made in Qatar.
Made in Qatar everywhere. No, I think just adding on to Sami, it's not very far off dream that we may not see conquer. That I feel like maybe two reasons behind it. One is political motivation or the political leniency that the kingdom can benefit from. Like, having good relationships with the US itself can have huge benefits in terms of production and tax tariffs, which currently has been the scene this year of tax tariffs everywhere. And we've seen this with India as well. Like, no one ever predicted India to become a tech hub. Yeah, India had tech services, product services, people, human capital who provided you that product services, but not in terms of manufacturing tech products that would be specifically, let's say, Apple iPhones, which are being produced now. I think they're going to move to Mac devices also sometime soon. But no one ever predicted that. And I think that envisioning that with an open mindset and having a bit of hope that we will get there. It's not just, I don't think that will just be an achievement for Saudi Arabia or the kingdom itself, but as for the region, because this resonates very highly with the younger generation. And being a Saudi or being someone who's been in the region for long enough, understanding how the region has grown them or made a product out of themselves, it'll bring immense pride. And I think that's what the community looks forward to.
Yeah, I have no doubt about it. It is, and yeah, I mean, Apple has certainly wanted to diversify away from China for a very long time, economic, political reasons. But I would also go back to what Tim Cook said once. I believe he was in China when he said this, but a lot of people have this misconception that Apple produces in China because of cheap labor. Everyone just says that,
Yeah.
oh, you make in China for cheap labor. And Cook's response was, no, it is not the case.
China stopped being the country with the cheap labor. I remember that.
Yeah. It is the saturation of talent for a very specific skill in one city. And I think the example was, you could fill an entire stadium with engineers about like, I forgot what the example was, but you could fill an entire stadium full of people specialized in one skill. In the US, you could probably barely fit a bus with engineers specialized in that same skill. It's the saturation of talent that really makes China appealable. Now, when you look at Saudi, as I said, we have very high human capital and very high human investment here. But in order for us to get to a point where I think Apple would even consider wanting to move production here, we have to continue doing what we're doing in terms of investing in education, investing in training, and investing in these opportunities. What we're seeing today is the result of decades of investment in that regard. If we have this conversation in 30 years, I'll say the same thing, that whatever happens in 30 years is the result of the investments that we're seeing take place now. So it is not a matter of if, but really just a matter of when. But we just have to continue doing what we're doing in terms of investing in education, investing in training, investing in people and their hopes and their dreams and their aspirations. That is what ultimately is going to let us get to a point to where someday we might have, if not the whole iPhone, we might have, some part of it produced here in the kingdom.
I think, yeah, we are in that woke era of trying to achieve anything and everything, and not just for our current generation, like for the future generation. So somehow the mindset has changed in the region. Like, hey, it's not about us anymore. We need to have open borders. We need to have open mindsets. That would probably bring me to, like, to the next question, like adaptation of what you do within the content, because you've worn many hats. Like, you've been a writer, a reporter, a public speaker, now an independent creator, and your mission has been, like, why bring this information to people of the region itself or of the kingdom itself. And if you look at the younger generation, who I believe would be most of your followership, do you see any specific patterns of information that they seek out to, that they look forward to hear from you, and possibly that somehow influences of them to take a decision of like, hey, okay, I'm gonna get an iPhone 8 this year, or I'm gonna invest in a Pro Max.
Yes. Short answer, yes. I do get quite a number of DMs of people asking me like, Sammy, should I upgrade or not? I think that the question you're trying to ask though is what do young Saudis really kind of look for and what's their appetite? I always like to say that we are the one group of people that will never ask for permission. We don't ask for permission. We do it. We are a group of people with an extraordinary amount of ambition. We don't ask for permission. We don't seek out opportunities. We make them. We don't wait for opportunities to come knocking on our door. We will actively go out and find those opportunities and make opportunities for ourselves. So a lot of the conversations that I have with people, my age and younger Saudis here is, what opportunities are available to me. The incredible thing is it's not a question of availability. It's a question that there's too many opportunities available. I mean, it's just like, it's an endless sea of like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to submit your app idea to our Ministry of Information and Tech and get a loan for $500,000 rials? Or do you want to take a scholarship and go study abroad? Do you want to do an internship at XYZ? I mean, it's just an endless array of opportunities to the point to where we kind of just get overwhelmed and we're like, we don't know what to do next. So a lot of the conversations I have with people are, what's my next step? What is the next opportunity that I can go and take? How can I progress even further? And of course, I get the plenty of messages of, yeah, should I upgrade my phone? Or, what phone do you have? Or, Sammy, please, can I get a free iPhone? So
Free,
it's
wow.
so
I
so
thought
I
they
get
would
the
ask
wide
someone like Faisal
range.
and Saif.
So I get the wide range
It's,
of conversations, but yeah, it's certainly a spectrum of topics to talk about.
So I want to sort of zoom out a little bit and at least get your perspective on something. It's obvious you've had a front row seat to so many things, not just with Apple but also with a lot of other tech brands. But for others who are probably considering, what do you think all these major tech investment brands really get wrong when they come into the Middle East region?
I mean, Saudi in specific, I mean, every region, of course, has its own behaviors, has its own demographics, has its own behavioral trends and patterns and so forth. That's not unique to us. But I would say no company should look at its formula for the UAE or Bahrain and Qatar and just copy and paste it here. That's not going to work. We are a unique market with very high purchasing power, with very unique tastes. We are also extremely value driven and we're very culturally sounded. We are very proud of who we are, and we're not wavering from our culture and our heritage and our past. These are all characteristics that are quite unique to a market like Saudi Arabia. So I would caution any company to look at its formula and its approach and its strategies for any of the other countries and just expect that it's going to work here, because it won't. We are a unique place with a very unique history and a very unique history that's still being written as we speak. So thinking that you could just copy and paste your formulas is not going to work. Another point I would mention is Arabic, and this goes to the broader region as a whole. Arabic is a language that, unfortunately, especially now with AI, with user interface design, is a language that is not often focused on enough. Humane, for example, we have the first Arabic trained AI large language model is from Saudi Arabia. We have apps and programs and initiatives about increasing Arabic literacy in the tech space, in technology in specific. So when it comes to tech in specific and the region as a whole, I'd say focus on Arabic. Arabic is our language here, and you can't expect to come here and not have a very robust offering in Arabic. I'll give you a good example. Google. I love Google's devices. I think if there's any competitor to Apple that could potentially overthrow it, it would be Google. I love Google devices, and every time I've used it, it's always been a pleasure, whether it's the Pixel or the Watch or their earbuds. They have no presence here. There is no Google store here. You can't even
Mm.
buy a Google Pixel phone off market here. I don't know why, uh, but could be something to do with Arabic. I mean, I know there are a lot of Gemini and Google AI features that still don't support Arabic. Even Apple Intelligence still doesn't support Arabic. Even certain features in the Apple Translate app still don't support Arabic. And I'll give you an even better example. Apple Maps. I know you guys in the UAE have directions with Apple Maps. We don't. Apple Maps does not support drive-by-drive directions here. We recently got traffic information, so I can at least see the traffic on the road here on Apple Maps, but I can't get directions here on Apple Maps. So this goes to localization. If you're going to launch here, then we want global parity. We want the experience that we have here to be the same experience that someone in Europe or someone in the US will have. It is not fair for you to launch an experience or a product or a business here if you're going to do it halfway done. You're either going to give us 100% or don't give us anything at all. So those would be my general points, and my biggest pain points with Apple are those examples with Apple Maps and Apple Intelligence and so forth.
I mean, the one thing I used to mention based on the Middle East region, because having what Khan and I both have lived. I mean, I lived there, and now I'm here in the Dallas. Is I've always seen when it comes to Middle East, their first focus is the UAE, then Saudi, but then they lump all the other countries into one, like Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, and Qatar. It's almost like, okay, I know, and I think this comes down to like, okay, they look at Saudi and they look at UAE. UAE, okay, the market is more cosmopolitan. It's a big, diversified consumer pool, and it's business savvy, and it's become a business hub. And Saudi, I look at Saudi and I tell people, Saudi can take all the other 5 countries times 2, and you still have room to fill up more of it. And that's why it's such a big diverse market, like the Eastern Province and to the Jeddah side, and then Dammam. So I was like, okay, I understand why brands, I think, realize they have to start dividing and separating. I've seen a few brands realize they broke off from Middle East to say, for example, PlayStation. Yeah. So PlayStation has PlayStation Arabia. Now they recently have had PlayStation Saudi Arabia. So I was like, that means Saudi has now become a separate beast for them. And the UAE is still their main thing, but then they still fold Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait into the same. So it's like, but also it's I would just want to get a sense of like, as much as like Saudi is taking this big push forward, but it also puts you in competitive line against the UAE, which has been the regional hub for businesses and everything. So do you sort of see that to the point that, okay, I think a lot of what helped make UAE that global hotspot and saw all the big tech brands have come into the business presence, is now they realize, you know what? I think we need to start thinking that Saudi is being the new epicenter for the wider region.
Well, I don't think we are the epicenter of the new region. I know we are.
Yeah, I mean,
First
it's
point.
just that business-wise, they have to
it's-
start thinking like, move it there.
Second point is one of the big pillars of Vision 2030 is that we as a country are not going to succeed if our region as a whole does not succeed. Plain and simple. For as much as Vision 2030 is about progressing our own economy and social reforms here and investments here, it is also about the region. And I don't want to get too political here, but
Yeah.
if you look at even our foreign policy, what we do with mediations for the Russia-Ukraine war, our ongoing efforts with the war in Gaza, all of that falls under this very simple idea that our region as a whole has to succeed. That when we all thrive, we all win. So I don't look at it as us versus them or anything like that. No, there is enough opportunities to go around for
It's
everyone.
basically spreading and sharing the love and the benefits, not just within the borders of Saudi Arabia, but to the wider neighbors as well.
We are a very tight we all of our
All
relationships
of
with
us.
all of our GCC countries, it is extremely tight. Emiratis are like our brothers and vice versa. So I don't look at it as a competitive nature at all. We are all in this together, and we want the entire region to succeed.
I think just branching off what both of you have said about coming and influence in the region. This is what I feel like. Yes, I think Apple wants to be here, wants to showcase, wants people to invest in them, wants people to buy the products. But I always feel let down by a brand, Apple as such. Whenever all the new product launches happen, we are always at the end bit of it. Like literally, like and the funniest thing is uh, everything. Let's take the latest iPhone 16. It is channeled through the Middle East. I'll just not go further into it, but I know specific. The very first shipment goes through Doha.
I know it because I used to work for an airline and Khan works for an airline, so we know the cargo
So like
schedules.
I'm talking a plane full of iPhones going across the world. We're like, hey, like we are passing through. How about you want to have some? Made a drop off, like, okay, we give you some. And I think this is where when you talk about Sami, like, Apple wanting to have that market share, Apple wanting to have that presence, its product being the 100% that what it offers, is where it plays with its presence and its consumers. Like, hey, yes, this is the best we offer, but if you want it, you just got to wait in line for it.
I am willing to wait a very long time for an iPhone. I don't know many people are. I mean, I know a couple of years ago there was all this talk about supply chain constraints. I believe this was around 2022 or 2023, where the supply chain in China and Taiwan were very much constrained. And I mentioned it on TV at the time. I was on TV, and I mentioned it that people are willing to wait. And I don't think you'll find any other consumer group for any other company that would be willing to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks for their products. Like you're willing to put up $2,000, vanish it, and not have a product for almost a month and still be okay with waiting. So people are willing to wait, and I have gotten used to watching Apple events, and whenever there's a new feature, they'll put up a slide of like all the places that it's going to be available at first. It's US, Canada, and the rest of the world is like, well, guess we're waiting. So I've gotten used to that, and I feel like unfortunately many consumers have as well. But that goes back to, as you said, Apple either wanting to be 0 or 100%. But there's also, a bunch of things with like regulations and making sure that it's locally compliant. So there's more to it than we're kind of making it seem. But generally speaking, yeah, it's very annoying.
I mean, speaking just a little bit, also going a little bit of a tangent and expanding on that, like, just recently I was just reading that the Apple just recently launched more of their health features in Saudi and UAE. I think it was they just expanded hypertension and the sleep thing. The funny part was that, when iOS and Apple Watch all released in 2nd September, and I actually was going through the support document, and suddenly I saw, oh, Qatar is there. Why don't they talk about the other Middle East countries? It seems like whenever, like you said, you can wait, but then suddenly I was like, oh, Saudi, UAE, of course, commercially relevant. I mean, and I think that's also another thing when it comes to all these tech brands. I know they look at the markets and they see which one is worth putting more of their attention to, which helps to grow their business as such. But at the same time, I was like, listen, if you're going to talk about a few countries, even in the region, rather than saving it for like, oh, we've now brought hypertension and sleep apnea notifications to UAE and Saudi after getting the health regulation clearances. If you've mentioned Qatar and Bahrain, put it out there. At least that way you still like, oh, so it is coming to the Middle East. So maybe I may not have to wait long because my neighbors have it. That's always a thing as well.
I think the one thing that will excel us, as Sami rightly said, we also want to look at the development and flourishing growth of our lovely brothers in our lovely region as well. I think the next steps where the region should step into is somewhat of an EU leadership. Like just recently, this week, I heard there's going to be a GCC Unified Civil Aviation Authority. So for all the airlines in the region, there is a unified policy as EU has EC 261 and UK 261. So I think if we move forward with something similar, it would be amazing for the tech industry, because then all your GDPR issues, all your PIA information issues are easily resolved. Then product marketers, Apple, Google, Microsoft, anyone, then have a cheat sheet like, okay, this is what we're able to do in this region. Let's go ahead full steam. Because I think that's what's stopping many people from, because the regulations are so different in every country in the region. I think that's why Whoop took a while. They kicked off from UAE, and then it took a while for them to come. They could easily sell the device. It's not that people can go and buy the device anywhere else. Like you could buy the Apple Watch Pro and come back to Qatar, but your ECG and SOS doesn't work because it's just not regulated in this country. I think that is where I feel the future is. But and probably my last question to Sami, if you had to dream or wish for, something that Apple should make, from your point of view, from something that you would want, and you would want Apple to invest in it and be like, hey, either regionally specific or generally for the whole world, what would it be?
Well, while I think about that question, I want to just take a bit of a tangent on something you said regarding the EU. I've had, if anyone follows me on Twitter or X, I've had a lot to say about the EU. I am not a fan of the EU. I've had some very harsh words to say about the EU and the European Commission, and more specifically their dealings with regulations and Apple. I'll save you guys the headache of hearing me ramble on about that. But I will say that if money alone bought innovation, then Europe would be the biggest innovator in the world.
Indeed.
Period. Instead, they're the biggest, in my opinion, murderer of innovation in the world, with their well-intended but very stupidly and poorly executed regulations. So, because you mentioned the EU, and there are certain aspects that the EU does really well, and it also goes back to what I said about Vision 2030 being a regional vision about what we can do as a country to help our region, and how we can help lift up all of the Arab world is cornerstone to that vision. So just a quick tangent on what you said regarding what I would want Apple to invest in,
or invent.
The beauty with Apple, and something that it does extraordinarily well, is that it creates, whether it's a feature or a product, that once you have it, you don't realize how you lived without it.
True.
And then you're like, how did I live without this thing? So for as hard as we would sit here and probably try to think of something that we would want them to make, they're probably 3 or 4 steps ahead of us in creating something that we didn't even know we needed until we have it. I mean, AirPods, for example. I mean, can any of us imagine a world without AirPods? I certainly can't. I mean, my time, and this is going to age me a bit, like I don't remember using wired earphones that much. Like I had a very small portion of my life where I was using wired earphones. I don't know how I would live without my AirPods or my Apple Watch or my phone or my Mac. So if there was anything, I would say it's probably what we're expecting to get within the next year, which is like a HomePod, iPad, tabletop home speaker device thing.
Basically,
Apple
a smart home hub.
Pretty much. I mean, Apple's home strategy is non-existent, other than the HomePod and the Apple TV, but I don't even consider those real strong players in this smart home market. So anything that I could put in my bedroom and have sort of become an even bigger and more integral part of my daily life is probably what I would say to that.
I want to end with a final sort of remarks. Like, with all that you've seen firsthand right now with the country, how do you, and now we're 2025, there are still 5 years left until Saudi supposedly will achieve a significant amount of its national vision. Like you said, not just for the country, but for the region. How do you see that playing out?
Well, if I can just chime in here, I forgot the specific number, but I think it's somewhere in the 80 to 90% of the targets that we set for 2030 we've already achieved.
Oh,
That's amazing. Yeah.
So we've had to increase many of the targets that we initially set for 2030 because we've already achieved them. One I know off the top of my head is women participation in the workforce. We had set a goal for 2030. We achieved that last year. So, in many instances, we've there's still a little bit that we're working on, and it's not fully done. But obviously we have a goal that we want to achieve by 2030. Many of those metrics, many of those KPIs, we've already achieved them early, and we've had to increase our goal because we just realized we just keep hitting
just
them and
moving
we
the
keep achieving
goalposts.
them. We just have to keep moving it because we're hitting our stride pretty well here. So yeah, it's been amazing to see that, and again, it just shows the trajectory is just off the charts.
Well, and on that note, Sami, thank you very much for this. And I would say this is a very good way for people to really learn more about, I mean, us as Khan and I being, I would say, third culture millennials, we were born and raised in the region. Right now, I live here in Dallas after leaving the region. But, I always tell people, do not underestimate the Middle East region, especially I've been seeing year on year now people are really paying attention to it. And I hate to say they're focusing more on the three main countries of Qatar, Saudi, and UAE, even though most people are saying UAE. But I would say Saudi is a force you don't reckon with. And don't just believe everything you see online. It's good to maybe take the chance to venture out there. And for someone of your age, as to how far you've come, I mean, it's good to see that, okay, you've branched out to so many things and now you're taking the next step. Sami Fathi, shukran and thank you for coming on board. I know it's the evening time and it's the weekend there, so Sunday, I mean, right now I think people are right now winding down for the holidays. Khan?
Yeah, no, there's one thing I want to add to Sami's intellect. I think when I'm not going to say that we're old now, but when we had that the ability or the mindset of us on kickoff was quite later into our age or per se or our the community for us to come forward and be like, hey, we're going to take a stance and we want to speak about it, we want to share about it. And I think Sami has had the opportunity at the right time, at the right moment, with his stars aligning. I'm going to remember that line very much. And it's not more like I want to appreciate him for doing what he's doing, not just for himself, for his community, for his people, for the region as well. We all know it takes a lot of effort and your self investment, time, and mental peace as well into specifically when we are in this area of work, because today we might announce a chip and tomorrow it might not be able to happen, or 6 months down the line, like, hey, you said something was coming but it never came, what happened to it? So you really need to make a name for it before you take on yourself onto this journey and be like, hey, some disappointments are not gonna bring me down. It's only gonna make you stronger. And I'm really thankful for Sami coming on, sharing his insights from his kickoff to what he's now and his future plans. And inshallah, we'll hope our paths cross in the future. We are not very far from each other. Inshallah, I'm still in
Well,
Doha.
I'm far, but
Yasser has left us and gone very far away.
Yeah.
And with the amount of stuff that's happening in the region, the conferences, the events, you never know, we might bump into each other, and I really look forward to that happening someday. But
Absolutely.
with that, thank you very much. If you'd like to add any closing words from your end.
No, just thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I would repeat the sentiment that you can choose to ignore Saudi Arabia, but at some point you're going to have to face us. You can choose to try and ignore us as much as you want, but we are a force that you simply will not be able to ignore. So I would urge anyone who's listening, who's never been here, to book a flight, come visit, send me a message on X or Twitter. I'll be more than happy to tell you all the
or
best
LinkedIn.
spots to go, or LinkedIn or any other way you can get a hold of me. I'll be more than happy to help. But come visit us, come judge us for yourself. And I think I know you will leave with a very, very different perspective on not only Saudi Arabia, but on this part of the world. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Hopefully you can juggle your studies while you're still fulfilling your other passion of representing Saudi as well, although it does put you closer towards the UN being in New York. So I'm guessing, I can imagine you'll shuttle back and forth. I can see you flying back to Riyadh the moment Apple announces a date for their retail store. Like
Oh, yeah.
book a ticket, you'll
I'll
fly
be the
there.
first. I'll be the first one in line. I'll be.
I hope you will. I will look forward to seeing that photo. Like, yes, I have my tent set up here outside Diriyah right now, waiting to see the Apple store. It's like, yes, I'm the first Saudi guy right here. I look forward to seeing that, and all. And Khan, thank you for joining in. I know you have to go watch the season finale for seeing who will take the Formula One championship.
I literally have 45 minutes to rush to the airport to get on my
All right.
flight, but it's the technology that's going to make it pretty easy for me. It's not gonna. I don't have to check in. I don't have to sign immigration. So I'll be straight to the aircraft in 15 minutes.
Well,
And with
have a
that,
safe flight.
Thank
thank
you.
you, everyone.